And thank you, ISA, College of ISA and CAHO for organizing this very important webinar. So like we just heard in the last talk that although healthcare is not a huge contributor, it is a significant contributor nonetheless, and we have to do whatever we can to minimize our impact on the planet. And so we had this very important essay contest last year, on the topic of planet change and climate change and the anesthesiologist, because one of the themes of last year's this thing was planet safety. Apart from patient safety and patient professional well-being, etc., planet safety was one of our themes, and we were just surprised by the amount of awareness. We thought we'd assess awareness, but we were ourselves surprised by the response. And it was so many people, young as well as old, senior anesthesiologists as well as young anesthesiologists just within 5 years of training, but all very aware and all very conscious of their responsibilities as citizens of the planet. So the anesthesiologists do play a role. Now, I often hear that, within the health sector, the anesthesiology has a very, very small role. Our agents we use, the gases we use. But having said that, it still may make a difference. And secondly, we are not just there giving anesthetics, right? We are also taking part in operation theater management. We are also taking part in hospital management. We are also giving advice on construction of operation theaters, design of hospitals, and all these aspects, in waste disposal from theaters, waste disposal from hospitals. And all these contribute a huge deal to the overall contribution within the healthcare sector. So I think, and apart from what we do in our personal lives, just as professionals, we have a role to play as anesthesiologists, not just in the way we give our anesthetic, but also in the way we interact with other professionals, the way we take part in hospital management, operation theater management, hospital design, OT design, disposal of gases, disposal of waste. I mean, I think there's a very big role for anesthesiologists to play. And I think seminars like this will, increase awareness in all these aspects as well. And collaboration with organizations like CAHO, which include uh, members from various fields of healthcare, including hospital design, hospital management, and so on, and public health, will certainly spread this message and help to do our bit to protect the environment. Right. So with this, I'm very delighted to introduce the next speaker, Dr. Subramanyam Mahankali. He is a senior consultant and lead at the Astor Hospital, and he is the president of the Target Controlled Infusion and the TIVA Anesthesiologists Association. And I think that's one of the sort of pathways that we may need to take, in the form of TIVA, to minimize our contribution to damaging the climate. So I'm very happy to listen to Dr. Subram Mahankali on his views on a conscious decision about producing unconsciousness. Dr. Subramanyam, please. So I think having a webinar is an excellent green way of, contributing to climate protection, because otherwise we would all be flying down thousands of kilometers and meeting in a place, in some hotel somewhere or to have a physical seminar with everyone. And of course, we would have a great time, but we'd emit a lot of carbon in trying to achieve our goals of spreading awareness about carbon emissions. So anyway, so Dr. Subramanyam, if you're ready, then, can we go ahead?
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir. Good evening, all. Thank you, Divatia, sir. Thank you, all the leads of the ISA and CSA and CAHO for giving me this opportunity. Greetings to you all from a couple of years back. So just 1.5 years back, post-COVID, there was this news clip which circulated all around. And this was about banning an anesthetic use. So, if you ask me whether I was an environmental activist from the start, no. But this one really got me into it. And I was wondering, from the time I started training anesthesia in 97, there has been no new anesthetic drug which has been introduced. And one of those which was introduced is already been banned in Scotland. And that was because of its global warming potential. Then I thought to read a little bit more. I knew bits and pieces, but I thought to read a little bit more. Now, that led me to understand how long does the gases stay. If you ask me, sir, what about oxygen molecule? How long does it stay in the atmosphere? Believe me, oxygen is a very, very stable molecule. It can stay, whatever which has gone into us, gone through our body, comes out to the lungs, and it can stay in the atmosphere for up to 10,000 years. For example, if you walk into any of the places where people like Mahatma Gandhi has lived, you probably will be breathing some amount of oxygen molecules has gone into him and come out and staying somewhere in corner, and it still might inspire us. So oxygen is such a molecule. But what about other molecules? So that was what was wondering. And that led me to read a little bit more. And what about our anesthetic gases? We have been giving anesthetic gases for nearly more than 150 years. And we do read about a little bit about metabolism of it. Metabolism basically means once it goes inside the body, it gets converted to something else. But unlike other IV drugs or oral drugs, so the drugs which we give through the inhalational route, especially the volatile anesthetics, they don't get metabolized much. They come back out, and they come back out into the OT environment. And even if you scavenge it, it goes out of the hospital and goes up all the way into the atmosphere. It is not disappearing very quickly. That is something which we have to carefully look into, and all of us are looking into it. The commonly used anesthetic agents, you look at it here, nitrous oxide, what is called the laughing gas, which is not only used in the OTs, but also probably used in labor rooms, in some dental centers, etc. It is given at a very, very high rate. Only 0.004% is metabolized. The rest of it comes out of the body, comes into the room, and goes out into the atmosphere. And desflurane, isoflurane, again, they are also very, very less metabolized. Only sevoflurane probably has between 2 and 5% of metabolism. That means whatever anesthetic gas which we are giving to our patients for n number of hours, all of it has the potential to come out and go into the atmosphere. Now, the next thing for us to know is, after it comes out, how long does it stay? I told you, probably oxygen stays for around 4,000 to 10,000 years. What about these gases? These gases, if you look at nitrous oxide, if you're given a nitrous oxide based anesthesia, even your grandchildren will be having the effects of it. So carbon dioxide for probably around 30 to 40 years, desflurane for around 20 years. Next time you have grandchildren, they will still be having the effects of desflurane. Sevoflurane and isoflurane are probably less. And this is very important for us, because how long does it stay in the atmosphere? The next thing is to see, after coming out of the OT and entering the atmosphere, where all can it go? So this is an interesting study which was published a few years back. If you look there, the amount of anesthetic vapor concentrations in extremes, like for example, top of the Europe called Jungfrau, Antarctica, they have checked the anesthetic gas levels. And if you see here on the left, at the top here is the halothane. Halothane has been used for more than nearly 100 years now, or maybe 75 years now. So the levels have slowly come down over time. And even in these places, it is there. But if you look at the bottom two, desflurane and sevoflurane, it started only in the late 2000s, and concentrations have been going up. Parts per million has been going up and up. And it's already there in the top of Europe, etc. It is said that any gas, if it's sufficient quantity is there, it takes a year to go around the world, go around the earth. Now, why is this important? Anesthetic gas escaping out from what we use in a closed environment in an OT, where AC is there, etc. What happens is, when all of this goes around, it can start to have effect all around us on the earth as well. So the important things which we have always been discussing is, some of the gases are ozone depleters. Nitrous oxide, which we are using, is probably one of the key ozone depleters. But there are other anesthetic vapors which we use. They act as a greenhouse gas. Greenhouse gas means what? Here you can see here in this picture, the greenhouse gases stay within the troposphere. And I'll briefly explain what this greenhouse gas effect, why it causes warming. So if you see, generally, there's a lot of heat to the earth is coming from the sun. The solar radiation brings it, comes to the earth, and the earth reflects it back. Now, if there are no greenhouse gases, natural greenhouse gases will be there, for example, carbon dioxide, water vapor, etc. They do allow some amount of heat to go away. But if you have a lot of human-generated greenhouse gases, instead of escaping out into the atmosphere, it acts like a curtain and reflects it back. What it means is the heat is not escaping out, it is trapped within that greenhouse and slowly starts to warm. And why it is of concern to us? Because along with CO2, which stays for around 30 to 100 years, our anesthetic gases can stay for a long duration and can cause. So in effect, what is essentially happening is the heat is not allowed to escape out of the earth. As a result, global warming, we are contributing towards it. No, nobody has anesthesia because they fashion it. Anesthetists use anesthesia gas only because it is needed. Now, other thing which people started to look at was how do we understand what is the environmental impact apart from the what is released into the atmosphere, how long it stays. They looked at a few other parameters like global warming potential and CO2 equivalent and etc. So these were starting to look at, but I will briefly explain to you what is to help us understand what is the global warming potential, etc. So people to help us compare the different agents or different techniques, etc., they have used the global warming potential of 1 kg of carbon dioxide as a standard over a period of 100 years. If you compare that CO2 as 1, the desflurane stands at 2,540 times. So if you look at nitrous oxide, it's around 300 times, but look at the magnitude of impact it has over the period of 100 years. Now, other way of understanding the environmental impact is to see, to compare it to something which we already know. In cities, especially, we are very conscious before using our own cars, etc. to go. We start using cars in groups so that we can reduce the impact. So 1 hour of giving anesthesia with a sevoflurane, which is one of the most modern anesthesia gases, is equivalent to driving around this much there. Okay. Now, what about the other gases? If you look at nitrous oxide, it is giving approximately 106 kilometers driving. So sevoflurane is around 5 to 10 kilometers, whereas with nitrous oxide, 1 hour of anesthesia is equivalent to driving around the equivalent CO2 emissions of 100 kilometers of driving a car. But what about desflurane, which is perhaps the most modern of the anesthetic? So it is equivalent to driving around 200 to 400, perhaps closer to 400 kilometers of driving a car. That amount of CO2 is delivered in 1 hour. For example, today I did a case from morning 6 o'clock or 7:30 in the morning till evening. I would have given probably 10 hours of anesthesia. If I had given 10 hours of desflurane anesthesia, it is like I would have traveled on 4,000 kilometers. That is traveling from here to Delhi and back by car. Now, to put it in a nutshell, 1 hour of sevoflurane at 1 Mach hour, we call it as Mach because that is the minimum Adela concentration where just adequate gas is to anesthetize the patients. So it is equal to driving 6.5 kilometers. Whereas if you look at the bottom two, nitrous oxide and desflurane, especially desflurane, it's around 320 kilometers per hour. That means that amount of CO2 equivalent is generated. Now, other important thing to look at is this spectral graph. If you look at here, the energy which is trapped in the atmosphere, it happens at certain frequencies. On the left of your screen, you probably are seeing the CO2. Anything CO2 from whether the vehicles or etc. gets trapped in that, and that particular frequency is what is blocked by that CO2. On the right is methane and water vapor. They act at that. In between the two is the atmospheric window, where very, very few agents are there which can go and block the energy radiation or the energy going out. But unfortunately, our anesthetic gases seem to be falling in that particular window in which the heat cannot escape out of the earth. So it can be very, very, very add to the effects of CO2 and other greenhouse gases. So that is the reason why anesthetists all over the world are a bit concerned that whether there's anything we can do to make sure that we can mitigate the damage or reduce the damage. Now, people have done various analysis. One of the popular analysis is what is known as a cradle to grave analysis of anesthetic agents. So they have analyzed the carbon dioxide, or the impact on the earth from the time it is sourced to the time where it is disposed of completely. And if you look at compare the different commonly used agents, desflurane, isoflurane, sevoflurane, you see desflurane stands at a very, very high level, where starting from manufacturing to using and after it is it gets exposed to atmosphere, the damage is very, very significant. But there are a few other techniques which can make it less harmful to the environment, especially the use of sevoflurane and propofol in appropriate quantities. Now, this is an interesting study which I found it published around a year back, wherein which they have compared the OTs of 3 different countries. On the left is Vancouver General Hospital, the middle is in USA, and the third is John Radcliffe Hospital. If you look at here, from the OT, the contribution of the global warming gases or the global warming potential, or the carbon footprint is generated is around 60% in both Vancouver as well as in USA. So that was in Minnesota. So, but whereas systems which have started to learn what is their impact, especially John Radcliffe Hospital, it is around 5%. This is what I want people to focus on. A mind which reads around the topic, which prepares and executes its decision, can ensure that our effect, the carbon footprint, is reduced as much as possible. Does it mean that John Radcliffe is giving less quality of anesthesia? No. They understand the impact of every procedure, every process is done in a way, and it's done in a way that it reduces the carbon footprint. When we give anesthesia, we have a choice. No? Most of us are very proficient, whether it is general anesthesia or regional anesthesia. So nowadays it is going 50-50 with each other. But one way of reducing the use of general anesthetic is to ensure we use the regional anesthesia techniques as much as possible, probably in combination with general anesthesia. At least the pain relief is taken care of by regional anesthesia. As a result, the use of general anesthetic medication, especially vapors, is reduced. It not only is good for the patient, it not only keeps them stable, safe, but also good for the environment. In fact, I would suggest that every case, in one way or the other, there is a way we can use local anesthetic to advantage to reduce the pain, and it should be component of every general anesthesia technique, every surgical technique wherein which we can reduce the pain. Now, when we give a general anesthesia, yes, we give it because it is needed, but we have a choice. When most of us tend to be preferring towards inhalation anesthesia because we are trained in that. But what are the commonly available agents? These are the commonly available agents, desflurane and sevoflurane. What about nitrous oxide? Nitrous oxide has never been a full anesthetic. It has been an agent which is used to deliver anesthetic along with oxygen. Because it reduces the amount of other drugs, we were using it. But that old habit of having manifold of cylinders of nitrous oxide, running it to the hospital, delivering it to patient, is still there almost in every hospital, whether it is new or old. We need to think about how do we use it, if we use it, or do we need it at all. Now, the reason why I'm telling is, for example, in my own hospital, nitrous oxide, even though I use probably in 1% of the case when in pediatric inductions, at least 5 to 6 big D cylinders, which each cylinder costs around 10,000 rupees for refilling, is used. And it gets escaped without even knowing us that it is there. So nearly 95% of the nitrous oxide, which is there in every hospital, is leaked into atmosphere without being used, without it being aware as well. And what about desflurane, sevoflurane? If we need to, definitely we can use it. And how to use it? We can say now we can choose more of sevoflurane than desflurane. The key things when we inhalation anesthetic is to use appropriate amount of fresh gas flow. That means the gas which picks up the local anesthetic gas and delivers it to the patient, the lower it is better. So there were concerns by a few societies, at least in the late 90s, etc., because if you use a very low fresh gas flow with sevoflurane, they were concerned that certain compounds were generated in the carbon dioxide absorber, and that is not good. No publication has ever shown in human studies, and we should embrace fresh gas flow rates less than 1 liter wholeheartedly, because nobody has demonstrated. There is no point using 4 to 6 liters or even 2.5 liters when we are using inhalation anesthesia technique. This reduces the amount of volatile anesthetic used for the patient. It reduces the cost for the patient. It reduces cost for the entire environment as well. What is the alternative we have? So slowly we are advancing with what is happening around the world, and there is a technique which we have started to adopt, what is known as a total intravenous anesthesia. This is a newer technique, probably in the last 10, 15, 20 years. It has been it is expanding around the world. And this is a technique wherein which we use entirely intravenous anesthetic agents to produce unconsciousness and to keep them unconsciousness. And now with the advantage of technology, especially AI, so we are entering the domain of what is known as a precision anesthesia. It is very safe, effective, titrable, and predictable. And you can use it not only in the traditional OTs, but also outside the operating rooms, like, for example, in CT scans, in endoscopy rooms. So in cath labs, where you can easily use without any big worry that whether leakage is happening or not, who is looking after switching on, switching off of the volatile vapors, etc. This is a wonderful technique which everyone, if we are not learned, we have to learn how to use TIVA and start adopting it in every hospital around India, whether you are in the center of a city or in one corner of a village. Now, what I was telling you about why this TIVA is because this gives us a chance to what is known as personalize the anesthesia, because any drug what we give, it has to be based on particular scientific parameters. Most of the world uses, especially the medical world, uses only weight as a parameter to determine what dose to be given. Now, in anesthesia, we have moved not just about the dose per kg, we have moved what is the concentration required in your blood, what is the concentration required in your brain to keep you asleep, and use these 4 parameters: the weight, the height, the age, and gender. Probably you soon have pharmacogenomics as well, where according to gene we can decide how much anesthetic to be given. And this use of a TIVA technique gives us an opportunity to personalize anesthesia according to the patient's complexity, and it's something which everyone should use, and we will be starting to use. So can we use it in all the age groups? Yes. It has been used safely. The models are there, which are very, very, very acceptable in children, neonates, obese patients, and every patient category it has been found to be used. So there is no reason why we should not grab hold of these pumps and start using it. Now, people also ask, is there any cost if we adopt this TIVA technique? So does it increase the cost? But we all know, whenever we buy an equipment or use it, there are 2 kinds of costs: the capex, or the capital expenditure, which is to buy into the device. It's almost very similar to the vaporizer. But if you want, what is OPEX, the operative expenditure, it's probably less than half or close to half of what we do. So in adults, approximately it costs around 400 rupees per hour. In children, it's probably much less. But if you look at volatile vapors, sevoflurane, at least in my hospital, it comes up to around 750 rupees per hour, and desflurane comes up to 900 rupees per hour. So in that way, a TIVA is not costly at all. So in effect, what I want to say is, what also it gives us is the advantage to wake up the patients in a way that they are not fighting. This is after an 8-hour surgery, a liver surgery was done, and patient was experimentable without coughing, without bucking, wherein which calmly waking and responding to questions what we have done. Believe me, this is an 8-hour long surgery. If we had used traditional anesthesia vapors, patient would still be zonked, and it would be needing at least an hour or more before I can wake up these patients. Now, when we give general anesthesia, we have a choice, whether inhalational or TIVA. So, but whatever technique we use, one way of reducing the environmental impact, keeping the patient safe, is to use regional anesthesia wherever and everywhere possible, and use blocks effectively preferably before the surgery, because this is the era of ultrasound guided regional anesthesia, where we have to give some form of multimodal anesthesia start before the surgeon uses the knife to cut the skin. So that is the best way to prevent the total amount of usage of the anesthesia drug as well. So and suggestions to reduce. No, anesthesia is a very, very, very educated community. Along with the ISA, we will go into every part of them. But the key thing is to see if we can reduce the use of drugs like desflurane. Limit the use of nitrous oxide usage. If you're not using from the cylinder or not placing the bank, you shut the bank off for some, so that it doesn't leak. When we use volatiles, use a very, very low flush gas rate. Flush gas flow rates of less than 1 liter is very, very acceptable. And use TIVA wherever you have a choice. It's perhaps the futuristic one. We should start to adapt it. And use of regional blocks does reduce anesthesia consumption a lot. So in short, what I want to say is there is a choice. You can choose dirty desflurane if you want to use, or you can use nasty nitrous oxide. No, I'm still a fan. You can still use source or nitrous oxide. But it's time for everyone to see if they can move to this tremendous TIVA. It will make a difference to you all. So in my short, what I want to say is a conscious decision we all make about reducing unconsciousness. It should not be just conscious, it should be conscious and conscientious decision about not just the patient and the environment as well. So just a few take-home messages before I finish. Every one of us, we need to keep the environmental impact, whatever we do. Ditch the desflurane, use low flow anesthesia wherever possible, use regional blocks, consider TIVA, and TIVA is safe and economical. If you have advanced pumps, fantastic. Otherwise, you can use app-based delivery of IV drugs called passive TIVA. Precision medicine is there, and we should start practicing it. In short, do what we learn and learn what you do. That's the summary. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Subramanyam Mahankali, for taking us through a journey of showing the evolution of anesthesia and what the modern day anesthesia does. So it's very important to embark on the journey for every anesthesiologist, and ISA will take a good note about it, and we'll make sure that we come up with the guideline along with CAHO on the best possible technique, and probably we can design procedure-specific anesthetic plan to decrease carbon footprint. So that was an excellent exposition on decreasing inhalational, increasing target control in infusion, and also enhancing the use of regional anesthetic technique. Thank you so much, Subramanyam Mahankali, and we'll take the questions